And Joe, we got to ask you too. I have to ask you as a comedian.
Yes, please.
The tweets about Louis.
Yes. Honestly, no one's a bigger fan of comedy than me, and
Right.
I like all the darkest stuff. So Louis picking subjects where he's making jokes about a lot of people who are struggling or victims.
Sure.
And he does those jokes, right? So, and I think about this in the moment. So he does these jokes. I know that everyone's going to write about it. I know all these kids are going to read it. They are real people. This didn't happen a very long time ago.
Right.
Somewhere out there, and I know this is something that like a lot of comedians don't care about. Somewhere out there are kids whose friends are dead. And they're trying to get over it. And this guy they probably used to really look up to is shitting on them, saying, you're not interesting. But those kids are reading all about this guy they probably looked up to shitting on them. He's just punching down at, kids who got shot at or whose friends died. Honestly, no one's a bigger fan of comedy than me. And
Right.
I like all the darkest stuff. Your comeback material shouldn't be mocking kids whose friends were murdered. But Jim, is there, and maybe it's just because you haven't been exposed to it. When you meet people whose friends have died, when you meet people who've been shot and they're fucked up for life, and you have a real empathy, and when you have kids and your kids are doing active shooter drills and they're terrified and it's ruined their entire childhoods, the fact that they really believe any day they can get murdered. You're not thinking about the other part of it, and this is because you may not tuned into it. I've done these benefits with shooting victims, right? So I've sat with like a parent who's like, my kid is dead, and she tells me the story about how her kid got shot for trying to, save his girlfriend. And I've met a lot of people who got over getting shot in Vegas and in all these places. I've looked into their eyes.
In your eyes, the light, the heat, I am complete. See the doorway, 1,000 churches, resolution.
So give him a fucking break, honestly. No one's a bigger fan of comedy than me, and
Right.
I like all the darkest stuff. But in the moment when he hurts those kids, I care more about those kids knowing like people care about you than I care about like, I gotta protect Louis' bubble of comedy. What's your angle here if you're making fun of trans people? No, trans people, they commit suicide. They get murdered at a crazy rate. So it's not really the moment to go, I'm put out by the fact that you want to be called by a certain name. Yeah, a lot of people have done that bit, by the way, so it's not even that interesting a bit. There are people who are like, I'm getting murdered. My friends are all committing suicide. Maybe it's not the moment to call me a jackass because I want respect. But at the same time, I wouldn't hammer the trans community. And there's a defiance in talking about trans people. What you're talking about on stage just hurts other people. I just feel like it's more important to say to those kids and to trans people, hey, you're suffering. I care more about you than this. At some point, I choose being a human being over like comedy theory. We could talk about everything. Honestly, no one's a bigger fan of comedy than me. And
Right.
I like all the darkest stuff. He doesn't have a right to not be criticized. It's not like he's in a bubble and we're supposed to be secretive about his act. He's on a public stage. He's getting paid. But that crowd is kissing his ass so hard, and so much of that material is so weak and from such a demented point of view that why shouldn't he hear from certain people like, hey, Louis, you're kind of out of tune right now. But who else is having a hard time because of this political correctness? Like there's so many comedians talking about so many things in so many different ways. Just because I want to know, like, who's really taking a hit right now? Like, what comedians
Norm
are
Macdonald
having a hard
almost
time?
lost his Netflix show,
Yeah.
not apologizing the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
his press tour became an apology to it
Yeah,
because of the
Chris
first
Rock
interview.
said one thing or something. People are going back and grabbing old audio from 2011. He said the N word. So every comic.
Well, Kevin Hart lost the
Oscars.
I am, honestly, no one's a bigger fan of comedy than me. And
Right.
I like all the darkest stuff.